Hi, everyone. We'll get started right now. So thank you so much for dialing in to our webinar today. My name is Sophie Sparks. I'm the community manager here at the Information Lab. And I'm really pleased to have my colleague and Tableau Hall of Fame Zen Master, Chris Love, with us today. And he's going to be taking us through why you should be experimenting with Snowflake. Now, lots of people might know the Information Lab as Tableau and Alteryx partners, but we are also AWS and a Snowflake partner. So that's why we're talking to you today about using Snowflake. We've only recently become a Snowflake partner. So Chris has just started using Snowflake, and he's going to be telling you about how he's been experimenting with Snowflake in a more of a hobbyist fashion and how you can get started using Snowflake in a very small way. Now, if you have any questions, and I see we've got one person with their hand raised, if you do have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and Chris will have pause at the end to answer any questions for him about Snowflake. And if you do have any questions about any of our upcoming events or about this particular webinar round, if it's been recorded, I can answer those for you. So with that, Chris, can I hand over to you?
You can indeed, Sophie. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen and we will get underway. So, as Sophie mentioned, we at the Information Lab, we're right at the start of our Snowflake journey as a partner. We've obviously seen Snowflake around and certainly been integrating the likes of Tableau and Alteryx with it for a few years now, but this is kind of the start of our formal journey. And when I was asked if I fancied talking about my experiences, I thought what I wanted to do was just introduce you to the world of Snowflake, how I'd seen it and how I see how people can make use of Snowflake, but really introduce you to some of the benefits. I'm going to do that across 10 different points and introduce you to what Snowflake is and why you might be interested in it, covering everything from my own personal use, with some hobbyist activities, all the way through to how you might then roll that up to a more corporate type environment, how much that might cost, for example, or how you could work out the cost and some of the benefits around that as well. So without further ado, Snowflake is great for hobbyists. This is my first reason why you should be experimenting with Snowflake. I'm a data hobbyist myself. I find data out there on the internet. I work with it all the time. Things I'm interested in across the news, across music, downloading data and working with it. And it's something that crosses over into my other hobbies too. So I'm quite a geek when it comes to board gaming. And I share that passion with my friend, Andy Cotgreave. Andy Cotgreave is the technical evangelist at Tableau, and he's put this website together doing Tableau work around Arkham Horror, the card game. And I've got a whole host of cards here that for this game. It's basically a living card game. You buy cards, you update your packs, and then you use them. It's a cooperative game that you use to play against a set of monsters from the world of H.P. Lovecraft. And you build your deck before you start playing. And so what Andy's done is a lot of work around which cards are people using in those decks, which characters are they using to build those decks. And he's put, as you can see, there's different factions, there's different cards, who's using those cards, which characters are they using, etc. And he's done a lot of Tableau visualization on that. You can see that at decipheredreality.com. If that's something that floats your boat, or you're just interested in what Andy's doing, then head there. But Andy came to me and he asked me for some help because the data that sits underneath a lot of this sits in a website called ArkhamDB. ArkhamDB is a crowdsourcing data set that allows you to basically upload your websites, your decks to the website. You add which 30 cards in a particular deck you're using to build out, and then you tell other people about it. They can rate, they can comment and see what's winning. And that's how Andy works out what's popular and what's not. But the challenge was for Andy. He's obviously a data visualization expert and had lots of interest in this, but getting hold of the data was quite difficult. And underneath ArkhamDB, there's some APIs that make that a bit easier. You're not scraping. They actually give you some legitimate ways of getting the data out, but still there's no definite kind of repository of simple data to download. So what I did was I went to Alteryx and I built out a what I call the Necronomicon. If you're familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, then you'll be aware that that's kind of the book of all evil in the world. So this was my source of all the data and all the evil around the ArkhamDB. And I was so I built out this Alteryx workflow that scraped a lot of that data. And you can see the kind of different strands across here, that it downloads the decks and the cards that are in that. It downloads the decks themselves as well as the lookup of cards. Then what Andy did, he had to run this Alteryx workflow. He doesn't have access to Alteryx, so he had to run that on our Alteryx server. He had to download the data as CSVs. He then had to run a Tableau prep script on that to work through that before then hooking it up to his data. And that would take him half an hour to do even after running this workflow. It just wasn't really the most convenient way of working. And there was always this missing piece. And this happens with a lot of particularly hobbyist activities where you're trying to share data. The missing piece of where do you actually put the data that you're trying to share, the source data sets? And how do you share that with other individuals within the same space? That's something I come across all the time. And those hobbyist databases have got certain requirements. They're probably going to be cloud-based because I don't have a server room downstairs or under my desk that I can store these things on. So it's probably almost definitely got to be cloud-based. I'm not in the interest of pumping lots of money into my hobby and data collection activities. I spend enough on board games without necessarily spending lots of money on collecting data about board games. So it's got to be cheap/free. There's got to be very little management or setup. I don't want to kind of be keeping the lights on a database and making it work constantly. It needs to work with my existing tools of Tableau and Alteryx, obviously, and it needs to be easy to share the data. What's less important for me right now in this kind of hobbyist activity is the speed and security. This is all data that I'm not too worried about. So these were kind of my go-to places my considerations when I was looking for a database to start working with. Now, it just so happens that we'd started looking in earnest at Snowflake. So Tom Brown, my boss, the MD of the Information Lab, our founder, and just said, Chris, I'm looking at Snowflake and it's great. I've just signed up for the free trial and I just got started. I didn't need any help. I didn't need any support. You should have a go. And this was right in the middle of the conversations I'd had with Andy around improving this workflow. And so I did just that. You can do it too. You can just go onto Snowflake's website, type into Google Snowflake trial. You type in your details and you pick a platform, AWS, Google, Azure, and away you go. You get all this credit to test drive Snowflake for 30 days. You'll be greeted with a web interface to be able to do that, and you could get started. So that's exactly what I did. So let's show you what I built out for Andy. It's going to look very similar because the Snowflake version is almost identical. In order to set this up, I needed to download the driver for Snowflake. So if I go to my ODBC settings and just scroll down here, you can see I've set up a data source in here. I downloaded the driver. I pointed it to the database and schema. Let's have a look at this one because this is the one I'm actually using. I've specified a warehouse and a role. I'll come on to define those later. And I defined an authentication method. and the server is just a URL. So with that, I can then very simply just add these output data tools to my data to export data into Snowflake. So what I did, I just added this, clicked here, come to my data sources, come down to Snowflake, and you'll see you've got the ODBC connection and the bulk output as well when you're doing an output. Normal inputs will all work via ODBC. The bulk output, though, is what you'll want to use for uploading more than just a few rows of data. You type in you choose your ODBC link that I've just created. You type in your username and password. In this case, I'm authenticated by Google, so it pops up a little browser for me. And you choose where you want to stage your data on its way into Snowflake. So really simple, I just select local. You then give the data table a name, and away you go. That's as simple as that. Alteryx does all the hard work. It creates that table and it puts it into Snowflake when you run that. So really, in effect, I'm showing you that not much changes on the Alteryx side, or whatever data tool you're using. You're just writing to a database pretty much as you'd expect. Let me show you what it looks like when I dive into Snowflake. So Snowflake is a browser-based GUI for you to interact with. It's obviously a cloud database that you're interacting with. And so when I log into Snowflake, you can see I've just got a list of different databases on the left-hand side. I've got the information playground that we use to just throw data into here. And you can see the 3 ArkhamDB tables that created off the back of my tables. And you can see that for those of you who are familiar with SQL, I've just done some playing around creating those tables and setting those up. And you can also kind of just run queries pretty much as you'd expect, kind of select star from a particular table. That's going to give me the data that sits underneath that. And the nice thing I like about the Snowflake GUI in particular is that you also get this history of the queries you've run. So if I want to go back to look at how long things took, when things were running, you can see I ran another query at 11:10 today. We could pick up the details of that. That will open and it will give me that query result as I was looking at it then. So you can scan back, you're not having to rerun potentially expensive queries against databases if you don't want. So that's a nice little feature that I thought I'd point out. I can then share that data with Andy. Some things I'll point out here. I've got a role, so as you can imagine, you've got different permissions. So this has been set up by our CTO, giving me the role of a core team member. There's a warehouse. This is called core WH for me, and it's extra small. Then my database and my schema. So in this case, it's called keep. And then kind of, as you'd expect, I can query this with Tableau as well. So let's show you what that looks like. So to connect in Tableau, all I do is go down to Snowflake, put in my URL. I'm going to sign in with my Information Lab account using Google. Again, you could sign up with a username and password. It's going to ask me to give me permission, and then I can log back in here. So then I choose that warehouse. So I've only got access to one warehouse. I choose the database. So it was til playground. And I choose the schema. Then I'm going to get a list of those tables. So if we want to, for example, look at the decks, Andy would probably be the one doing this for his visualizations. Then we can just create this. We can look at all the investigator names and the number of times they've been used. So we see that Roland, one of the longest running investigators, has had the most decks created in this particular sample data set. So that is the world's most boring demo. Snowflake is a database. It connects to Tableau. It connects to Alteryx. So let me just dive back to my slides. So what's so exciting about Snowflake then, given it is just a cloud database? Well, the exciting thing for me is that it scales for your use cases. So I was talking about this hobbyist kind of world that I got started in. And I started thinking, well, for a lot of the customers I work with at the Information Lab, they've got exactly the same requirements. I've often talked about this. This is the blog post back from 2016 that I wrote. And really the path to insight isn't a straight line. You can find a link there, and I'm sure Sophie will drop it into the chat for us as well. What happens is with data, and particularly with data visualization, is you don't start with a set of defined requirements right at the start. You find all your data, you find the right data, and you load it into a particular data warehouse. Then you kind of work out what the dashboard is going to look like. It's going to have a chart up here. It's going to have a bar chart over there. We're going to have some detail at the bottom. Then you build it, release it for feedback before going to a final release. That just doesn't happen. What you end up doing is iterating through this if you're doing things well with Tableau. And so I'm going to reference Andy Cotgrave here. He's the one who introduced me to this squiggle from Damien Newman, a famous designer. Damien applied this to design, but we can equally apply it to Tableau. This is perhaps how we run things at the Information Lab with a week-long project. We'll start with a kickoff meeting where things are really undefined, and we'll spend about 3 hours really blasting things out and really trying to drill into what data is needed. Work out, is the data adequate? Perhaps at this point, you're still working out, do you even want a database? What are the reasons for needing a database? So you might then only at that point decide you need to put it into a particular data warehouse. You'll then start building out a dashboard before releasing it and feeding it back. But you need to do that really quickly. It's pointless spending a long time building out a really formal ETL process and a really formal database structure before you've even worked out what kind of data you need to visualize at the other end. So we'll often iterate through this process of defining data requirements, building things out, and pushing out visualizations with our stakeholders multiple times over the course of a project. That's the way we work. That's the way we should be working. That's the power of these tools that we're using. And so our agile database requirements are really similar to our hobbyist data requirements. We probably want something that's cloud-based because it's got to be really easy to access. It's got to be cheap. It's got to have very little management. It's got to work with the tools we're using, etc. The one thing perhaps here, I've said security perhaps isn't as important. Obviously, that's debatable. If you work in a bank, obviously, we're often iterating with very sensitive data. So you often need a very secure environment. So Snowflake is fully compliant. It's HPICC compliant, so meets a lot of the banking regulations. All the data is encrypted at rest in there. There's lots more information we can give you if that's a particular concern. So don't worry, I'm not saying that Snowflake isn't secure or compliant. I'm just saying for these kind of use cases, perhaps you haven't gone to the formal point of defining exactly what permissions you need to share with everyone and defining all that security out. It's lower on your agenda at this point. And what makes Snowflake really good in this area is that they've separated out the fact that you need to do compute kind of processing activities over here from the actual storage layer of the database. So I talked about earlier about warehouses, databases, schemas without particularly defining them. So let me just quickly touch on that. You'll perhaps be familiar with a couple of the terms. from working with the likes of SQL and other internal databases that you work with already. So a schema is just a logical grouping of tables, views, and different pieces that we want to keep together in kind of a group. And a database is a logical grouping of those schemas, again, somewhere to keep them. So in a similar way, you know, we've got projects in Tableau, we've got workbooks, which collections of worksheets. They're just exactly the same kind of similar groupings of terms. What traditional databases do is they keep that when you define the compute power of a particular database, you're running that against the database itself. You stick the database on a particular server. You pick if it's AWS, you pick an 8-core server. If it's a SQL server in-house, you'll have already picked the hardware that fits on, and you can't tweak that. Where Snowflake has completely kind of broken that paradigm is that they've got this concept of a warehouse, which is a cluster of compute resources. And that is the CPU, the memory, the kind of temporary storage, everything that goes to running those operations, to select data, to load data, to bring that all through when you're doing queries and different pieces. That all sits in a completely different place. And so to draw that out more specifically, you've got this centralized storage layer in the middle. You've then got different compute areas, which can be multi-cluster. You can have different, define as many of those as you want. And then obviously across the top of that, you've got this optimization, security, metadata sharing layer that you'd expect from any kind of database. Okay, so all those cloud services we kind of take as read with Snowflake. What I'm really interested in is the fact that these two are very separated, and I can start to describe why that's really important. Because when we define a warehouse, we're actually defining what size we want it to be. So as we define that, then we've got things like extra small all the way through to 4x large. And that will basically define how much power you're throwing at that particular problem. And it will also determine how much you spend on that particular problem, which means that for those agile, really quick use cases like I'm using, then you can just define a small, extra small warehouse and not be worried too much about cost. It's going to cost you a very, very small amount of credits per second. I'll come on to what credits are later. And so when we think about how we might evolve on our Tableau journey, all this agile development will probably sit inside a extra small warehouse that we don't worry too much about cost. And we just simply allow our developers to go mad, just adding things, experimenting, working out what they need without worrying too much about how it's going to cost us. So my next point is that Snowflake is super fast. You perhaps heard about its speed, and part of that is due to the technology underneath it, and part of that is due to the fact that you can just throw these compute resources at it to make it faster, more you need. So if you want to go up to 128 servers to run something, you can. So let's dive into another demo. Just to show you the speed, it won't be a particularly long one. So I'm going to connect to Snowflake again. I'm going to connect to our instance. It's just going to ask me to authorize again. I've closed that too soon. There we go. So let's come back in here, go to our core data warehouse. Let's go to some sample data. So this is data that I didn't have to load. This is data Craig loaded for me. And we'll go to the public schema that I've got access to. And I'm going to load the Chicago taxi trips. And let's just see how big this data is and what kind of data we've got. So we've got 195 million records in there. And if we're looking at the kind of companies that have used these different taxi trips in Chicago, I think this is the Uber data that was released, and we can quickly look at that and see that 40 million just here, 33 million for null companies, flash cab, etc. That is obviously a huge amount of data that we've just queried. We can drop these dimensions in, we can build them, we can use them. But I haven't changed my warehouse. We're still using the smallest size of warehouse there, the extra small that we're using. If Craig wanted to give me even faster access, perhaps it's a bigger data set, and he could assign me a slightly different warehouse for this particular query that I accessed through and chose, then it would run a lot quicker, and I'd obviously pay that little bit more for it when I was querying Snowflake. So we're able to change how we query that data and what we do at any particular time, scaling it up and down to meet the demands of what we need. Let me go back to my deck. That was, as I said, that was a really quick demo just to show you the kind of speed we can get from multi-million. Obviously, Snowflake will go up to the billions, tens of billions, and really give you the flexibility to load any data that you want into that warehouse without the worry of the scalability of your existing internal data silos. So continuing kind of our journey in implementing this as a data enterprise tool, we might think about some ad hoc queries. We might want those, say, through Ask Data in Tableau, and we might want to push a medium data warehouse onto those to make sure that those ad hoc queries that our analysts have in the different departments that we've got are answered really, really quickly, as fast as they can. So we assign a medium warehouse to that. And this is the power of what we're doing with Snowflake. We can choose these use cases, choose the size of warehouse that we want to assign with them, and fit what works best. Now, all this works because Snowflake is pay as you go. And this is perhaps something that you kind of feels a little bit alien to you. It's something that we're not used to paying for IT services as we go. But we are used to that in the rest of our lives, and you're perhaps more used to it than you think. For my electricity, which is a great analogy when it comes to thinking about Snowflake, I pay for my electricity after the event, after I've used it. So what I can do is walk around, and I do this. I've turned into my dad. I walk around turning off all the lights after the kids as they leave for school. I can guarantee every single morning there'll be 2 bedroom lights left on. I also use features on their computers like auto suspend. So the Xbox turns off if they don't use it for that long. Likewise on the telly, that will turn off if it's been left on. We've got all these features in our lives that already do a lot of the things that we need them to. The security light outside, this high power light, only comes on when someone walks in front of it. Therefore, I can manage my electricity usage to the point that I really need to. If I notice my bill is really creeping up and I really want to focus on it, I've got a smart meter. I can look at that on an hour by hour basis, go around turning things off and really optimizing the way they consume electricity. If I'm feeling a bit more blasé, we've got some spare money in the bank, it's not something that I want to spend my time on doing, then I can just leave that to run, monitor the bill when it comes every month, and just budget some money every year to make sure that we've got enough. And that pay-as-you-go model is exactly what we use with Snowflake, and that's got some features that we can use. So with Snowflake, you only pay for what you use by the second. So the first minute, you always pay for a minute of query time. But after that, you're paying for Snowflake processing time by the second. So as you use these different warehouses and run different load queries and things, you can use something called auto suspend that turns off your warehouse when it's not being used. So you have a bit of a flurry in the morning. Perhaps your analysts have been running lots of ad hoc queries on that medium data warehouse. They've all been pushing that through and got quite excited overnight with some new ideas. As that runs, it will stay on. Lots of make sure it's really optimally used. Those queries will hit it, and then it will auto suspend after that activity, and fire back up and auto resume when they come back in. Likewise, if you've got an hourly extract of data that you're looking to take, the same thing happens. It pulls down. It might take 2 minutes to extract all that data. You pay for how many seconds that extract takes. You then stop using that. So really simple to understand. An extra small warehouse is 1 credit per hour, 0.0003 credits per second. So as you scale up the warehouses, you just scale up the number of credits you're using. And the nice thing about that is that you decide the amount you pay, and I do need to plug in my computer, bear with me. There we go. The amount you pay, the amount of speed that you want and the amount you pay often simply scales. So let's say you've got a query that takes, or an extract that takes 4 minutes to pull out of your database. It's a big extract that you're pulling into Tableau. On an extra small database, that takes 4 minutes. If you scale that to a small data warehouse, it will take 2 minutes. So while you're paying twice as much for the servers, you're paying half as much for the time. So you've got this linear scaling that it will tail off as you throw more and more resources to it. It's not exactly linear, but you can decide how fast you want things to run and almost pay the same as you do. So you can prioritize things as you need to. And Snowflake will scale with you. It will auto scale, but also based on the number of queries that you throw at it. If you're likely to have hundreds of thousands of analysts potentially all hitting a query at the same time, then it will just spin. You can set it so that it automatically scales out and spins up additional processors to allow it to scale as you need to. And then finally, you do pay in advance. So you can buy credits in advance across a year so that you can predict how much you're going to spend. You get the benefits of buying those at scale, and then you can consume those credits as you go through. And that's something that I'll talk about the pricing later, but that's something that we can help you do as well, predict how many credits you're likely to consume. So in that sense, it's no different to paying for any other database. You still budget at the start of the year. You still work towards that budget and everything else. But if you need to consume slightly faster, you're able to. Or if you need to slow down and save those credits, then you're in the same boat, which makes it really, really flexible. And that's something I really like about this pay-as-you-go model that I didn't, when I first came across it, I was a little bit skeptical about how that would land in the traditional IT world. Snowflake has lots of ways to bring in data. I've already talked about Alteryx. Alteryx certainly isn't the only tool you need to bring in. I'll talk about a few of them here and a few of the advantages. Now, as I say, I'm right at the start of my Snowflake journey, so I'm still getting used to these. And this is one of the downsides of my journey into Snowflake, if I'm honest, is that I've got a lot of different technologies to get used to because there's so many options, which is great if you're a customer out there looking for lots of choice. So some examples. Snowpipe is Snowflake's own continuous data ingestion service. What I mean by that is it's something that if you've got a data provider who lands data into S3 and continually just drops data in there. Perhaps you're a transport provider and you're selling tickets, and you get a CSV file of all those files that get dropped on there. Or you've got some other, maybe a website that has lots and lots of page transactions on it, or queries. This sort of stuff really suits very, very, very high transactional data that is happening by the second or by the minute, that is going to be loaded onto an S3 bucket by a third-party supplier. But you need some way to ingest that into your environment. And Snowpipe is the place that you would do that. It basically monitors that. There's a messaging service, picks up the file, loads it into your Snowflake infrastructure. It uses the same credit-based system, and then it does a transform on it to bring it in. You've got almost live data coming through as soon as it's made available, and it's just automatically being added into your Snowflake infrastructure. So that's something that, that would be really, really hard to do in a traditional Tableau world, or a traditional Alteryx world. Alteryx isn't built for those kind of continual data ingestion type things that are happening every second or every minute. Likewise, we've also got this whole plethora down here of different tools that have got different advantages with Snowflake. I'll call out a couple that I've come across. Fivetran has got some great, almost automatic API integrations with lots of your really well-known ERP systems, internal systems, or APIs out there in the world. If you're bringing data in from a really well-known system, it's well worth looking at one of these platforms, because they've often done the really hard work for you. For example, I was looking at NetSuite the other day. NetSuite has got a really complex API. I don't really want to have to build that out, interrogate it, and spend lots of time doing that. So Fivetran and other platforms have got automatic things that they've already built. You just point at the data, give it credentials to your system, it will load that data into Snowflake. They've got different pricing models. Airflow, you host. Fivetran is a credit-based system. You need a relationship with Fivetran as well as Snowflake. Matillion is an ETL low-code solution that sits in the cloud. They've also just released an Express version that's free, so that's got some connectors in there as well. So there's lots and lots of choice for you to be able to bring these things in, as well as using Alteryx and your existing infrastructure as well. So lots and lots of choice, but also we don't need to go for the traditional ETL type approach that we perhaps would have done in the past. When I'm used to getting data ready for Tableau, what I'll often do is bring it in, use Alteryx to transform it, and then load it into whatever database I'm working with at that particular moment. The great thing about Snowflake is it's really supportive of semi-structured data. By semi-structured data, what I mean is the likes of XML or JSON, where we don't necessarily know which columns or which data is particularly coming in. We don't want to build a structure ahead of time. So with Snowflake, you can load that straight into a table structure, load that JSON into a structure, and then query it live with SQL and transform it on the fly as you're reading it, which gives you, again, loads of advantages. It means you can be really, really flexible to building that out if you're skilled in querying that semi-structured language and you know the underlying SQL. It's got full SQL support, as you could expect. It uses the traditional SQL that I'm used to. And there's lots of other functions as well that you can use with Snowflake. You can really dive in there too. The more technical you are, the more you'll be able to build out those structures and get the most of that environment. It's completely up to you how much you do that. As you've seen right at the start, my hobbyist environment was just using a tool I was familiar with. I loaded it in. I barely needed to touch the warehouse or know any SQL. It just did all that for me, and then I queried it with Tableau. Whatever's happening in the middle is just sitting on a cloud database. So you choose how much you want to dive into and build this out. But if you want to get really geeky about this and you've got a an internal team who knows SQL, who wants to dive in, and you certainly can do. The last point I'd make here is around Snowflake's instant copy feature. I wasn't really sure where to put this, so I dropped it here because I think it's really neat. You say to Snowflake, I want to take a copy of this data. Let's say you're doing some dev work on a live production table, and you want to just see what changes you need to make without interfering with the live stuff. Just make that copy. Tell Snowflake to make that copy. You get an instant copy of that data, exactly the same, no downtime, and away you go. And you're altering that without altering the live stuff. It doesn't sound much, but compared to having to copy and spend a long time loading all that, perhaps billions of records into a new table, is really powerful. So with that in mind, we might have some semi-structured data loaded on a small data warehouse, a small warehouse. We might have some more traditional ELT or ETL processors from some new processors connecting to APIs, as well as our agile development down here that sits on some medium processors that runs perhaps first thing in the morning to load into our warehouse. These could be from all sorts of different use cases across our business. We no longer need to silo HR into one area, marketing into another, finance into another area. The great thing about Snowflake is it all sits on the same platform. We can choose who gets access, how fast it should be through these warehouses, and everything just sits in the same place, breaking down those walls across the organizations and meaning all our data is just accessible in the same place. When it comes to querying our data, I've already talked about these ad hoc queries, but something to point out is because we're using a cloud data warehouse, we don't need to make the choice of whether it's live or extract. We can still choose. We're not forced to go live and consume those credits all the time. So for example, we might want our board reports to be live. The board wants up to the second report straight from Snowflake. They want those to be super quick. Well, let's do that. Let's give them a medium infrastructure to run that off so it's nice and quick. Our reporting extracts that run first thing in the morning still probably belong on a Tableau infrastructure. We don't want to be querying that live whenever someone uses those dashboards, but we might want to run it in a really small window after the data becomes available before everyone gets into work at 9 a.m. So we could set up a multi-cluster to do that. 2 large environments that's going to pile through that data really, really quickly. We'll get it done in 15 minutes, billions of records, and we don't need to worry about it. We've processed all our data. You've got lots and lots of flexibility with that. However you want to kind of consume those pieces, you can. The other point is that Snowflake sits on the platform of your choice. You've perhaps already invested in a route, so AWS, Google, Azure. It doesn't matter what you've chosen. Snowflake, and I'll just bring this diagram up again. Snowflake can sit on any of these 3 platforms. When you sign up for your first trial, the first thing you'll be asked to do is choose one of those platforms. There's no work to do. That's all hidden. You wouldn't know it was sat on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, but Snowflake is doing all that work. It's choosing which one's right. You choose which one's right for you. And it will do all the work of spinning that up. Now, that is important when it comes to cost. They've all got some very slightly different costs, which you can take a look at on their website. But it's worth knowing that whichever one you've chosen, Snowflake's got your back. Snowflake pricing, though, is simple to understand. So it's a credit-based model, as I've said before. And it covers all the different platform requirements that you'd expect. So, you get the one platform. You've got lots of workflows. You've got all that security. You've got no worries about hosting something, a database that's going to go down. The team at Snowflake look after that all for you as a managed service, so that's all covered. And you've got all that performance and scale that you can scale up or down as you need to, as I've been talking about. So when you go on their pricing page, I've picked AWS here as an example. You pick the platform, and then you get the pricing. And this tells you how much you're going to spend on credits. So you'd perhaps want to start off with a standard data warehouse. Enterprise ones have got a bit more detail around kind of multi-cluster warehouses. You could go back in time, 90 days, different kind of external data tokenization and things that you might care about, as well as the more business critical ones where you've got really kind of HIPAA support and things like that, that you might want for real business critical things when you look to implement this across a large enterprise. They've got different costs. One thing to note is that you are paying for the processing power, as I've said. The storage is almost free. It's not quite, as you can see. If you pay up front, it's about $24 per terabyte per month. That's nothing when it comes to storage. So you can almost forget about the storage element of you can leave data in there, you can load it in, don't worry about it and come back to it as you need to, because you'll only be paying for it when you choose to query that and pull that out. So that means that it can flex exactly as much as you need. So let's look at our sample use case that we've been building up over time and put some numbers to it. So our agile development, we might do about 4 hours expect 6 analysts to do about 4 hours of agile development in a day. They've all got different things to do. They're going to meetings and things, but on average, let's estimate that they're doing about 4 hours every day across those 6 analysts. These reports, these more traditional ETL, ELT type reports are going to take 2 hours on a medium warehouse. Our ad hoc queries, we've got about 50 analysts across the business on any given day, doing about 0.1 hours of querying. So really fast querying, just diving in and querying through Ask Data, those kind of things. That might be on a particular day, we might have 200, 400 different analysts, or not necessarily analysts, users out there who don't identify as analysts. And we kind of average that to work out, well, how many of those on a given day for a certain amount of time might be doing that querying. And remember, we're paying by the second. So 0.1 hours is going to be quite a long time for those querying on that medium data warehouse. Reporting extracts, we perhaps expect those to take an hour on a large data warehouse. And then our board reports, we've got a live query for our 5 board members. And they're not looking at it every day. They're perhaps doing 0.1 hour, 6 minutes of querying on any given day, looking at those dashboards. Again, that's quite quick because we've optimized the Tableau resources. So how does that translate? How do we work out how much those costs? Well, remember, each cluster has got a number of credits per hour. So extra small is 1. Small is 2, medium is 4, large is 8. We go up in powers of 2. We put in the number of users and we put in the number of hours. Then our maths is simple to work out the number of credits. We simply multiply the credits per hour by the number of users by the hours, then multiply it by that $2.70 per credit in order to get a daily price and an annual price. The annual price, we're not counting weekends because we don't use our data at the weekends. Why pay for it? So we've got £43,000, which is a very, very reasonable price for doing all this querying. If you compare that to what you're paying internally now, then personally, I think that's really reasonable for a large data warehouse that you can flex up and down as much as you need to. You're probably going to grow with just this use case, slowly add things on and grow like this. You're not going to certainly start with this. And you're going to grow only as you see that value increase and see the paybacks into the business. I hope that makes sense. It's one of the things that we get asked most about is, well, how much is Snowflake going to cost me, particularly as it's pay as you go? This is kind of how we work it out. We just do some some rough estimates to work out exactly how much you need. We talk you through the different use cases that you're likely to get, and then we go from there. Last 2 points. This is really fortuitous, actually. If you've come to a webinar about Snowflake, then you're going to be pleased to know that the Snowflake Summit is happening tomorrow and on Thursday across EMEA. You'll see the date here is the 8th of June. That's when it starts in the US, so it's starting this afternoon. Feel free to register on Snowflake's website. There's going to be a great keynote tomorrow. There's a great community around this, and there's lots of information. And lots of people already in the Tableau world are starting to use it as well. So you could go, you can learn more about that and start answering all your questions, perhaps that I can't answer because I'm just starting my own journey on this, through and find out much more about Snowflake. And finally, just to say, we're here to help you at the Information Lab. This is my, my sales pitch. I've got to do this for the company. We are here to help. We are a company who's just taken on this this partnership. It means that we've got the whole team. There's much more of us. I picked out a few familiar faces for you just there. We're writing lots of blogs about Snowflake, so check out our blog. You can see Mike's written something about AWS Lambda in Snowflake. We're also having this series, so every month we're going to have another webinar about Snowflake with one of the team talking about their experiences or something they've got to teach about Snowflake. With that in mind, til.bi, talkdata, that's our meetup group. You can see there's talks on Tableau. There's our weekly training at 3. And next Tuesday, there's something I want to point out that is Snowflake, a big member of the Tableau community, Snowflake's Eva Murray, is going to be talking. She's the senior evangelist at Snowflake. She's going to be talking about driving impact through analytics communities. That's at 1 p.m, so about this time next Tuesday. So make sure you tune into that. She'll no doubt talk about her experiences as she's just started at Snowflake, but also lots and lots of thoughts around the Tableau community and how to drive that engagement in your internal communities. So with that in mind, I'm going to dive to the chat and just see if we've had any questions. So please drop them in there if you've got anything to ask. As I say, I'm just starting my journey with Snowflake, so I don't guarantee to be able to answer everything. But if you do have any questions, let me know. I've tried to answer everything that I saw in the pre-questions or that I commonly get asked.
Hey, Chris, thank you for that talk. I've dropped all the links you've mentioned into the chat box. So just while if there are any questions, people are typing them in. Chris, I've got a question for you, if I'm allowed to ask one as well.
Go for it.
It sounds you've done a great job letting people know how easy it is to sign up to Snowflake. But if they did have, are there any extra resources you found either on the Snowflake community or through any other particular people who are talking about it a lot that you found really helpful when you got started?
I know it's kind of a bit of a cliche, but Google has really helped me. Where I've got stuck in building things out, then what I've done is just turn to Google. Snowflake have got a great area of documentation. I've not necessarily gone there to start with. I've just Googled and that's popped up. So all the SQL commands you need to grant permissions and things, as I've been playing with those, have all been documented, really clear documentation. They've got a great community site on there as well that you can just ask questions of. So yeah, as you'd expect, I come from a Tableau and Alteryx world where everything that I need is almost at my fingertips, and it's been great to see that there's a really similar experience with Snowflake as well. And I think that's certainly been one of the things that has really helped me just to get started. I've not needed to go out to anybody else and say, how do I do this? I've just been able to learn it myself and get started with the resources that are out there. But knowing that then, if I was implementing this, there'd be the backup of kind of more professional help at Till if I needed it.
Thank you for that, Chris. And I love the answer. Just Google it, because that's very easy to remember.
Exactly.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions coming into the chat. So if anyone does have any more, any other questions for Chris, please type them into the chat box now. Otherwise, this talk has been recorded, and I will upload it to our YouTube channel and send out a link to everyone who's registered for today's talk tomorrow for you to, if you want to rewatch the video. I've also put into the chat all of Chris's contact details if you do think of any questions for him later on today, so you could reach out and ask him then. We do have one message coming through.
How have I found field naming conventions in Snowflake? Thanks, James. Not too bad. I think coming from I used to use Snowflake, not Snowflake. I used to use SQL a lot in my old role, SQL Server. I think I got into good habits around naming things in databases anyway. So I'm perhaps quite lucky there that I've not run into any particular problems there. So no, it's not been too bad. No particular gotcha so far. But as I say, that's perhaps because I've got into good habits from experience in the past. I think if you are new to databases, Snowflake's got a few foibles and spaces and things like that, but nothing too bad. Super. Well, in that case, we'll draw a line under that. Thank you, Leah, for that comment. If you do have any questions, reach out on Twitter or drop me an email at chris.love@theinformationlab.co.uk. I am happy to help. And if you're starting to look at Snowflake and just need a bit of advice, we are here to help. So feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much.